Hi folks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this time I'm going to have it about sandblasting. And I think the name sandblasting is probably the wrong name. We should call it abrasive blasting. And abrasive blasting is nothing more than taking small abrasive particles like the same ones you have on your sanding paper and have it carried with a stream of air under high pressure and high volume and have them hit the surface you want to blast. So if the surface is a bottom panel of your car, these particles will hit it very hard and thereby removing paint, filler, or even rust. It's a great way of cleaning up the metal plate before you start welding onto it, because if you start welding, the metal has to be very clean and blank. Now, you can use sandblasting for many different purposes. You can sandblast aluminum, copper, steel, whatever you want, and you will have to apply different grades of abrasiveness. Just like you have it on sanding paper or abrasive paper, you have different sizes, and 80, 120, and so on. The same thing is true for this kind of stuff. The grit comes in different types of material, different thickness, so different levels of aggressiveness. Typically it comes in a bag like this. This is like a 25 kilogram bag. It's a big bag, and you need to keep it real dry, and it's not that cheap. This runs around 19 euros, or about, let's say, $20 for a bag like this. Now, if you're going to use it, it's going to scatter all over the place unless you have a special system. So it can become a bit expensive if you use it. But if you have the right tools, it's going to be far more efficient. Now, people like to go out and buy a sandblaster, as they call it, and they look on the internet and they find tools like this. Right? A very simple sandblaster. Compressed air. This goes into the bag or the pocket where the abrasive product is in, and then the air is flowing through the gun, and because of the Venturi system, the abrasive material gets sucked up and it comes out of the nozzle and it hits the surface. By itself, a great system, and it doesn't really matter what sandblasting gun you buy, they all have the same principle. The problem is, of course, that you can buy these guns fairly cheap. They run around $20, $15, sometimes even less. But they always forget to tell you one thing, and that is that you need to have sufficient pressure and airflow. And so people buy this kind of stuff, or sometimes people even buy the bigger sandblasters like this one. This is a big container with a vacuum hose onto it, so you can actually recover the particles that you blasted on the surface. But I'll talk about this guy later. But it doesn't really matter if it is a small sandblasting system like this, very cheap, or you're buying about $100 sandblasting container like that one. It doesn't really matter. You're still going to need the air pressure and the airflow. And that's what they don't tell you when they sell you these kind of products. So you're going out and you buy this sandblasting gun, and you come home and you try it out, and you're so disappointed. So that's why it's so important to know exactly what you're buying and what the requirement is for such a sandblasting system to operate on. So people come home with their little air gun that they bought for $15. They thought they did a good deal. The commercial looked real good. So then they come home, they get their abrasive product, you know, they put it in there, they hook up their air hose from the little home compressor, and they start blasting. Or at least they try to start blasting. And the effect is very disappointing. It doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because this little compressor can't give you the volume and air pressure that you do require. So if you intend to sandblast or abrasive blast, you will have to have a decent compressor. There's no way around it. Now, the compressor itself, in average, should be able to deliver you about 120 psi, or about 8 to 9 bars, and at least a flow of 250 to 300 liters per minute. If the compressor can't deal with that, then you won't be able to sandblast, regardless if it's a small gun like this or a bigger one like that one, because it's always the same effect. You need the velocity onto the subject, and you need the pressure. You need both velocity, volume, and pressure. That's why a big compressor is recommended. And the funny thing is that when you buy these guns, they never tell you that. They always say, well, this works fine on a compressor, but they don't tell you how much pressure you need and what the volume is. But even more important is your buffer. This is the tank, and the tank is your buffer, and you need to have a big tank so that even if your compressor is just working on the edge of being able to provide the volume and the pressure, if you're using this big buffer tank, then you can work for a while, and then you stop and you let the tank fill up again. So that's the good thing about having a big tank. Now I would think you would be looking at a tank of around 50 gallons or a 200-liter tank. That's quite good. So that will get you going. So guys, don't fall in the trap of sandblasting guns that they are cheap. No, there's always an extra cost. It is your air compressor. Now if you have one, obviously that's good, but don't think that a small home built one, a hobby one, is going to cut the job for you. In my opinion, this is the far better solution for a sandblaster than the El Cheapo version. Remember, this is the cheap version, whereby you need to put this tube into a bag of sand or a bucket and then start sandblasting. Well, the bucket in this case is all inside. It's this big container. The little hose and the gun, well, that's all been replaced by this mechanism, right? So you got the gun still, you have the compressed air coming in, you've got the hose that's sucking up the abrasive material, and then you have a vacuum cleaner hose. This big black one is a vacuum cleaner hose. So the product comes out, it hits the surface, it bounces back, and because there's a vacuum hose on it, it sucks it back in, and the brush is actually to hold it a bit. So then it gets sucked back in all the way to the front, and then you recycle it. Now this is really good. I think this is a great solution, and the hoses are long enough. I mean, look at that. You know, this is quite nice. It's not that extremely expensive either. It runs you around, I guess depends where you buy it, around 90 to 100 euros or dollars, so that's not too bad. So this is the cable for the vacuum cleaner. You can open it up. Over here, it's the actual turbine of the vacuum cleaner. And here you have an air filter that sucks out the air. And then basically all you need to do is fill up the container with your grit, right? So let's pour it in. And you can easily pour in 25 kilograms without a problem. Every so often you will have to clean the air filter, obviously, but that's not that bad to do, and I don't mind to do that. The good thing with this system is you don't get any dust, or as good as no dust, and you recycle everything the whole time. So if you're using type of grit that is reusable, and some grit is reusable up to 20 times, this is a great system. You need to connect the high pressure hose from your compressor to the front, like so. And that's all you have to do. The rest is always fixed. So you have the vacuum hose, the high pressure hose, air, and then you have the product hose, the hose that sucks in the grit into the gun. And that's it. You know, it's easy, you can roll it about. So I like that. This is a great system, and I'm going to give you a little demonstration on this one. Now, I'm not making a commercial for this kind of product at all. I'm just letting you know that this is a great solution, far better than this little handheld gun, right? That's something else altogether. Now, there is a purpose for this, so I'm not saying this is useless. There is a purpose for that. You can imagine if you have to crawl in very narrow areas and, you know, in a footwell or in the trunk of a car, that might all be a little bit too big, so that might be handy, but that would be for very small areas to sandblast. So let me give you a little demonstration on how that works, and then you can make up your own mind. I know there's a lot of YouTube movies around, they show this kind of a product, but they never talk about the compressor, and it's always very short, and everything is perfect. Well, in reality, it's not always, but let's see how it works. So let us start the compressor. All right, so just on a side note, this compressor does 350 liters per minute or 12.4 CFM. just for you Americans, because I think you guys are using CFM. All right, so we put the pressure up to about 112 psi, or around 7-8 kilograms. So let me adjust that a bit. So that should be about it. And now we'll go and try to sandblast a bit. We've got the high pressure line up and we have the grit inside, so now we are ready to blast. Needless to say that you have to wear proper eye protection, ear protection, and if you can, wear the cap. I'm not going to do this for this little demonstration because otherwise you can't hear me anymore, but that's what you should do. So let me turn, see how it goes. So I'm going to sandblast this little area. So as you can see, this went very smooth and all the paint and rust came off. It's true that it's a little bit annoying if you do it like this because you can't see where you blow, but then you move around a bit and you know you can always see it. It works very well, I think, and this is really what I recommend, a system like this. If you look around, you won't see too much dust. As you can see, this system works pretty well, and there wasn't too much dust flying around that you would normally have with another sandblasting mechanism. The only drawback obviously is a bit that you don't see where you blow because of this mechanism, but you can always take it off and then you see it, but then everything flies around. So I'd rather be a little bit more blind and can recycle my stuff than actually having all this stuff to scoop it up and clean it up again. I'm going to give you a little bit of a wider shot so you can actually see only how little stuff flies around. So let me turn back on the vacuum cleaner. So you saw how much stuff flies around, as good as nothing. So now let's do a little test on another piece of the truck whereby we have really pitted metal and the rust is all deep in the holes, because that's the kind of rust you can't remove with a normal grinder or a brush wheel because you can't get into those holes. With sandblasting you can. So let's try that out. So this is a panel that has all these deep pits in it, and these deep pits are rusted as well, and those you can't really clean up with a steel brush if they are too small, or with a sanding disc. It just doesn't work. So that's where sandblasting is very handy, and you're gonna have this on your car, that's for sure. If you're restoring an old timer, that's the kind of stuff you will see. So let's do another trial. So here you go, nicely cleaned up. And this is why sandblasting is a good alternative, or actually it's a good means to clean up the metal before you start welding. Sandblasting or abrasive blasting is a great way to remove rust and debris and paint and filler on the body of your old car. If you decide to buy a sandblasting gun, consider buying one that recycles the sand or the grit, as I've shown you. It's cost you a bit more money, but over time it will save you money because you don't lose all the grit that you would have with a normal small gun. The other thing is, consider before buying that you need to have a proper compressor, a compressor with at least 2.4 CSF or 350 liters of air per minute, and 8 bar or about 118, 120 PSI. That's an absolute must. If you don't have that one, don't even consider buying a sandblasting gun because it's not going to do very much for you and you will guarantee be disappointed. So, thank you for viewing, and I hope to see you in my next video in one of the car rebuilding videos, but I wanted to give you this one because a lot of people were asking me about this. So here it is. Thank you for viewing. Bye-bye.